That's a good sign. Good morning, everybody. I'm Michael Bellicosa, Community Engagement Manager at Wilton Library, which means I get to organize all of our adult programming. And I'm very pleased to see you all here this morning. This is actually the first in-person program that we've done since March 2020. So congratulations for being here. It's a great topic and a great speaker. And you're going to see his presentation on the screen, which is also going to make a recording of his presentation, which we'll make available probably within a few days after the program, so you can review that. You've got the handouts. There's a sign-up sheet in the back if you want more information. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to my friend Carolina from SPEDnet, and she's going to introduce the speaker. So enjoy the program.
Oh, wow. This is something else. I'm so used to rolling out of just turning the computer on. So, hey, welcome everybody. I can't see everybody's faces, but so today's talk is presented by us, SPEDnet Wilton, in partnership with the Wilton Library, Wilton Special Education PTA, and the Wilton Public Schools. So I'm just going to 2 seconds, take a little shout out. So we are super excited about our new website, spednetwilton.org. So please go visit. It has so much information. It has all our webinars that we did during COVID. It's probably 40 plus, and there was a lot of great topics. All the PowerPoints and all related materials and articles are on there as well. Our guide, Bringing Knowledge to the Table, you can see a little green, a bigger version of it. It's featured on our site, and it guides you through special services in a very user-friendly way. We can provide you with a soft copy if you want. If you're a part of the Wilton Public Schools, you can ask your team, they will hand them out to you. And it also can be purchased through Amazon. The online guide that we have is interactive, and it has the hyperlinks will bring you to wherever updated information that you need. So today, I'm here. I'm Carolina Corrigan, and I'm a co-president, and Janine Kelly is my other co-president. Yeah. Okay. Unfortunately, our co-founder and our executive director, Eve Kessler, couldn't be here today. So Todd will take questions if you want to raise your hand during the presentation. Normally we do it at the end, but he said if you have anything, you can just raise your hand. And also just be mindful, this is an open forum and it is being recorded. So we can't guarantee any confidentiality. So I think, did I have everything? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to, so. And also in the back, there's flyers for the special education PTA about their upcoming events. And their president, Kara Berghaus, is sitting in the back if there's any questions for her at the end. And with no further ado, I will hand it over to Mr. Todd Kellogg. All right.
Don't forget that. No. Hello, can you hear me okay? Okay, I am a therapist by training, so if my voice goes low, just tell me you can't hear me. I'm quiet and soft, except at home. My kids, my wife, right? Can you put your therapist voice on, Dad? Okay. I want to thank SPEDnet and Eve and Janine and Carolina and the Wilton Library, Wilton Public Schools, and everybody coming here. This is a very popular topic. I'm not sure if it's the very first presentation I ever did, this particular topic, but I remember, I just looked it up. It's in 2005, so that's 16 years ago, that Candy Lombardi, she was the director of special ed services in New Canaan at the time. And she asked if I could do a talk. This was with the teachers, the school end of it. And then I think I did the parent end as well. Probably would have been good to have everybody together to do it. Hindsight's 2020. But that was a long time ago. And the primary source, or one of the main sources I used, is the last page of your handout. It's the book, it's the cover, it's the book, or yeah, the Kindle version now. And it's a good book. It's a good book. Throughout this document, I have other references and sources, and some of them are links. And so you can't link anything on a hard copy, but on my website, which I'll show you at the very end, you can download this and the links should work. And it takes you to various resources that go with the content. So normally I do a kind of more traditional PowerPoint. I have very little, I'm told, if you read the book, How TED Talks, it tells more visuals, less words. So I haven't done this one in a while, and I revamped it. I'm not just going to give you an old presentation. I did revamp it, but I looked at it and I said, wow, I can't remember all this. I got to keep the words up there. So this is untraditional in some ways. I think most of the things you go to have a PowerPoint. But there's so much information. I didn't want to give you the task of having to write it all down. So it's here in writing. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll down. So forgive me if I jump around too much. I'm an Apple guy. This will work fine. So I'm going to scroll down. So I'll be where I'll just slide down to where we are when we're at that particular place. I think as Caroline mentioned, you're welcome to ask any questions. You might remind me at times this is recorded, that'll be helpful, but well, it's recorded, which is good. So just ask, and if I think your question's awesome, but I can't, well, all questions are awesome, but if I think it's awesome, if I can answer it, I know it's coming later on, I'm just gonna say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna get to that. Because if I go too far out of order, I'm gonna be scrambling up here. So I'm gonna try to go in the order of the presentation. So what's at stake? I like giving this presentation to parents because, I'm a parent too. Full disclosure, I don't have a child with learning differences or special needs, but I have been working with children for since probably 2001. 2001. It's 2021 now. 2001. It's 20 years, and I've enjoyed all of it. I got into this field because of parents, believe it or not. It wasn't because of the kids, though I like kids, but it was because of the parents. And I was a family therapist before I became a BCBA, that's why. So I do a lot of parent work, and I work with a lot of kids too, but I think parents that raise children with learning differences and or special needs are, in my opinion, they're heroes. They go the extra mile almost every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And I don't think a lot of people really know what it's like to be a parent, to raise a child with learning differences or special needs. It's like parenting on steroids. It's like super involved and a lot at stake. So that's why I start off with what's at stake. Parental involvement, and this is one of the links in this first part here, has been shown, like the more you're involved in the school system, it correlates to more success for your children academically, but also behaviorally, and I learned this a long time ago for children growing up. When they're small and they see the world as so big, they look at systems like there's the parenting system, there's the extended family system, there's a neighborhood, there's the school system, and healthy development exists when those systems get along. If your neighbors are at war with one another, or the extended family has some real problems, or if the school system and the parents have a major conflict, that does impact the child's development. And so it's lots at stake. It's actually across the board when it comes to not just their behavior and academic success, but their self-esteem, their motivation, kind of buying into the big picture, especially for children who have a couple additional challenges, ahead of them. And, we're asking a lot of them to trust the parents and to trust the adults who are working with them at the school, and that we have it together and we have a plan, and we're all working together. So there's a lot at stake. So it's an important topic, and I know I've been to tons of team meetings, 504s, PPTs, and there's the good ones and there's ones that are tough. And you as parents know what's at stake. It's extremely important to you that things work out well. There's two major topics that we're going to kind of talk about. If I had a pyramid, this would be at the top. It's improved self-awareness of yourself in the moment, especially, and therefore avoiding pitfalls. Now, that little triangle with the person slipping, that's a pitfall. So in this entire document, when I saw a pitfall, I put that symbol there. So if you see it, we're talking about pitfalls. So besides being aware of them and then working on avoiding them, there's also strategies then and what to do when you're involved in a difficult conversation. So those are under strategies for effective communication. So this works, by the way, in all relationships. That's the bonus of this presentation. It works in all relationships. I use this all the time. When there's ever a misunderstanding. So this is I think very helpful. Okay, so what is difficult conversation? Well, it's difficult because it can be confrontational. And I don't know about you, some people like confrontation. I personally don't like confrontation, but it can be confrontational. And that can cause people to, kind of dread or want to avoid it. I mean, how many, you don't have to raise your hands, but how many of us avoid those difficult conversations? I mean, even with our own families, right? Or at work, or, the neighbor, that tree limb keeps falling on my property, and how do I go over there and make this work? But that's just a tree limb. Imagine if it's your child, right? It's that much more. So we tend to dread that. It can be unpleasant. I mean, some of us have physiological responses. We get all hot or sweaty or breathing, or our stomach tightens up. We experience anxiety, real anxiety. And there's a lot of fear. We're going to talk about fear a little bit later. But there's fear because difficult conversations can be important conversations. They don't always have to be, but they tend to be kind of even pivotal. And there's a fear that if you say or do the wrong thing, it's not going to improve, or even worse, it can get, or it can even get worse. So that's what makes a difficult conversation. And so we're going to talk about how to deal with that. So the first section here is really about, again, self-awareness. This is a large section of the presentation. And being self-aware it's a skill, it takes practice, and it helps you in all forms or all situations in life. Parents, I think it's safe to say parents will do anything for their children, anything, right? And I try to stress that in this presentation. And because you would do anything for your children, you desperately want things to go the way you think they should go. And that requires a fair amount of control. But unfortunately, outside of your immediate circle, you really don't control much, right? And so, but you want to control. And there's a very strong connection between the amount of control that we think we have and the amount of anxiety that we experience. So the more control we feel like we have over something, the less anxiety we have. In fact, if someone were to go and get worked with a therapist on anxiety management, it's about finding parts of your life that you do control. If you feel like you don't control something, the anxiety goes through the roof. And I think the analogy I always use is, you're on the airline, you're taking a flight, right? You're not flying the plane. You have zero control. For some people, that's very anxiety provoking. They feel better driving a car because you are in control. Though most of us know that the rate of accidents are much higher driving than flying. yet we still feel safer driving. It's just what we control and we can't control. No, for parents now, if you feel in a situation when you don't feel like you have enough control, the anxiety goes through the roof a bit or raises, you have that old, you heard it before, the fight flight response, right? A very core part of all of us. And for most, not all, but for a lot of parents, if they get in that situation, when it involves their children, think of the mama bear and the papa bear scenario, like you're going to have a fight response, not a flight response, right? So that's important to be aware of that. Like, that's why sometimes things get so heated and you get so revved up because, because this is important. It's about your child, and you're experiencing anxiety, and you're either going to cave or you're going to, get defensive or offensive. And sometimes that's needed, but that's the human response that we have. Now, when we talk about anxiety, I find this information very helpful. Anxiety does not exist in a vacuum, and it's used all over media, and you can look up Google and so forth. But if you go to, at the graduate level, when you're in psychology and so forth, you learn that anxiety is layered. It doesn't exist in a vacuum, like I mentioned. It's actually related to these other experiences. So underneath anxiety, right, the layer right below that is a fear, and which I mentioned before, of things, in this case, maybe not getting better or even worse, or the inability to protect your child or your situation. It could be anything in life, right? So we have anxiety, but underneath that is this fear that's there. And if you were in therapy, you would go further down, you would figure out what potential loss you might be experiencing in the moment, like what could have been, what should have been, what will never be. These are very, very core type of feelings, but they're there. And they can be very subconscious, but they are fueling the anxiety. And then, of course, you have anger, which I didn't talk about yet, but that's the top. And someone told me once that, I was at a presentation, and anger and anxiety are like two sides of the same coin. You can't have anger without anxiety. Okay, anxiety comes first. And then you have anger as a response. It's the fight response. And it's something that it's a survival skill. In some situations, it's needed, right? If someone is, God forbid, breaking into your home, or there's some event where you're looking at your child's in danger of such a situation, you're gonna do whatever you can to protect them. And there might be kind of an anger response, which is the empowerment, right? So those are when we experience anxieties, these are the things that we're kind of all wrestling with or that are happening, and being aware of that can be, helpful. We'll talk about why. Okay. So let's move on here. Okay, so this part is a little bit of this is a pitfall, and it may or may not apply to your situation at the school, but it's kind of good to know. There's something called triangulation. Now, you might know what that means. It's the term that's used in a variety of contexts, but in this way, we're using we call triangulation because whenever you have two people or two sources, like it be the parent, the family in the school, or a parent and parent, or whatever the case may be, if there's stress that happens, if there's stress that's going on between those two entities, those two people or two sources, then it's very natural to pull in a third. And what happens is, the analogy they use is, what's the least number of legs that will make a table stable? And they, I get some wise answers from some kids one time. Oh, big fat legs, yes, or one big leg, sure. But in reality, when you just think about normal furniture, okay, I guess normal, no, that's the right word. But when you think of just your typical furniture, it takes at least 3 legs. And that analogy was helpful because it's like, okay, that makes sense. It stabilizes the table. And when it comes to human relationships, it can stabilize the relationship between two people. Let's see here. So here it is. So whenever you have stress between, let's say in this case, it's between a mom and a dad, okay? And what happens sometimes is the child is pulled in subconsciously, where the child inserts themselves. And the stress is relieved because you get the third person to help that mediates things. It could be a distraction, like this person is not doing well at school, or he's not going to get on the football team, or this, or he doesn't have any friends, or whatever. It could be lots of different things, but it distracts you and it kind of relieves the pressure between two people, and it diverts it there. Well, why do I bring this up? Because sometimes if there is stress between the school system or the school, the teacher, the teaching team, and the parents, that can play itself out in the child. The child can get roped into that. And you have to be careful, but that's the human response. So you have to be aware of that this whole triangulation thing. Or if there's a situation where I've been in situations where there was a problem, a hardship between the parent and the child. And especially this one boy, I remember he was a teenager. He was avoiding school. He was playing a lot of video games at home. This is a long time ago, but there were still video games 10, 15 years ago. And the parent didn't mean any harm. It was a single parent. She was working, but she really didn't have any home policy around video games or what you should do if you don't go to school, this kind of stuff. And there wasn't really any rules around that, which for a teenager, that kind of invites the person to kind of take it as far as they can. And she should have perhaps focused a little more on what house rules do we have, but she spent most of her energies battling the school. And not that the school wasn't at fault at times, but it really completely distracted her. And I wondered if some of it was because it might have been easier to take on the school versus really deal with that home situation. It was one of those eye-opening events, and in the end, things worked out during a couple of years. Everybody seemed to get what they needed, but it was that was an example of triangulation. So then there's a link you can learn more about that if you really want to. It's a good old-fashioned family therapy theory. Okay, so when it comes to difficult conversations, now we're getting more into the meat of it. There's 3 levels. There's the first part is, what are you hearing? What are you thinking? What are you recalling? What's happening as you're experiencing it, right? There's that part. And then there's the part that's how it's affecting you emotionally. So you have the cognitive part, and then you have the emotional part. And in difficult conversations, you're going to have both. And you're trying to process and say what you need to say and not say what you want to say and kind of keep things in check. But then your emotions are rising. You're going through all kinds of emotions, which we'll get into. Those are 2 levels. And then the third level has to do with, the deeper level of how does this reflect on who I am as a person? In this case, as a parent, is my self-image or my sense of, what I'm doing and who I am, is that being challenged within a difficult conversation? And it goes both ways. Sometimes teachers get challenged as to whether they're really doing the best they can, or are they reaching the child. Sometimes parents might wonder, what am I missing? What do I do not understand about my child? I'm supposed to know them best, yet I don't know what's going on either. And so it can challenge, both, cognitively, emotionally, and that image. Those are 3 levels. And this is under, again, self-awareness. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into, how you can develop more awareness around those 3 levels, and then eventually strategies and how to address that. Okay. So there's some catchy phrases. This is one of them. It's called the truth assumption. And I know you know what this means. I mean, I experience this all the time. Even with my own relationships with my family members, I always think I'm right. Yeah. And I know this is being recorded, but I will say that I really do think I'm right a lot of times. And if I have one fault, it's that I try to prove my case. And particularly with something that's going on between me and my brother, I won't get into it, but we go back and forth. We're 2 different people, and I really do. He thinks he's right too. So the truth assumption is that we both understand. Our understanding our events are based on how we see it play out, and we think that is the reality, right? That's not, and I'm a big believer, we won't get into philosophy now. I do believe, in some absolutes, and often there's absolutes around truth. But when it comes to a relationship, truth is not as clear. And my truth can be partial. It might be true, but it might be partial because I'm not taking into account what that person's seeing or thinking or their experience. So, but we have this truth assumption, and we might want to catch ourselves because that's a pitfall. Like, okay, wait, I'm just assuming that I got not all the facts, but enough to make this conclusion. Now, why does that happen? And there's a few takeaways from this presentation that I really want to point out. And this is one. I think this has been very helpful as a therapist and just as a person in general. But why do we have this truth assumption challenge? It's because we tend to decipher or figure out their person's intention. So we tend to come to some conclusion of what the person's intending based on how it's impacting us. So think about that. It's actually, that logic is somewhat backwards, but that's what we experience. So I'm impacted by something. I'm affected by this. This is how it's affecting me. Or this is how I'm bothered by it, or frustrated, or angry, or annoyed, or upset. And based on that experience, which is real, I will then make an assumption that your intent was aligned with my experience. Now that in itself is, in most cases, and I encourage you to read this book because it goes through lots of examples and clinical studies as to why we know that's not the case, but why that is the case, but why, if we really were able to take a step back, there's actually more of a disconnect between what a person's true intentions might be and how we're impacted. But we just leap to that. So that's a tricky one. And then we go through that. So I have some examples, like, I'll just read these. So we feel that we can't trust them, therefore they must be hiding something, right? So I feel this, so now I have this conclusion. Another example is we feel mistrusted, therefore they don't trust us, or they think that we're not being truthful. And I've been in meetings where that clearly is the case. You see it play out, and we're all human, but we're basing this on how we're being experiencing what we're experiencing. And part of this presentation is about, hey, know that, because we'll get into the strategies later about how you can be aware of that and try to separate how you're experiencing something and not jumping to a conclusion about what they might be intending. Okay, and then if it goes too far, sometimes we'll even assign like a bad, this person is just bad or awful or mean-spirited or whatever. They've already checked out. They're retiring in 3 months. Who knows? But like we make these character type assumptions that has more to do with the person. And I think I think that really the fact is that truly bad intentions are rarer than we think. Not everybody's perhaps operates in always on in maybe the best way, but it often boils down to misunderstanding or their own person's history or just how they view things. And this becomes apparent. This becomes really apparent when you get into a situation where it gets legal, and the law is different than what might be always exactly in the best interest of whoever the party. So you have this different set of values, and that can sometimes adjust how people respond, but it doesn't always come down to people truly mean to do harm. That's usually not the case. So being aware of that. Okay, the pitfalls of level 2. Okay, so now we're getting to the emotions, right? And I listed some of the main emotions here. I'm sure when we get into different conversations, we do feel these things like hurt and anger and misunderstood. And that's a tough one, feeling like you're not heard, or you say something and it just somehow that just falls on deaf ears, it seems. Being anxious, again, not in control, hopeless. And when this happens, just being aware of it is important because, and you'll have these layers of anxiety and all that, because, you know, it always comes out. Like when we experience these emotions, if they're unchecked, it will come out, you know, whether you mean to or not, in an indirect way with, you know, your tone, or that person across from you might be sarcastic all of a sudden or aggressive. And so, you know, like, okay, their emotions are starting to really get revved up. They're getting frustrated or angry or impatient. And so, you know, they start to come across as, you know, as being difficult, and it's coming in there through their tone, or, you know, how a person sits, or they roll their eyes, or they talk over you. Like, these are things where there's emotions behind that, and not that you're there to treat that, but you, if we're aware of it, and it's like, if there's we'll get to the strategies of how you can help de-escalate that, because if two people respond the same way, then we know there's a clear escalation, right? At some point, someone needs to make a decision or a change in order for that escalation to stop. So, you know, maybe it's on their end, maybe it's your end, but the point is that being aware of it, you can help you kind of manage that a little bit. Okay. And then, you know, as you can, we'll get closer to the strategies. Under the conclusion here, under the emotions, you know, if you can recognize the emotions that you're feeling, the frustration, the, you know, you're feeling like, oh, the school year is almost over and nothing's been accomplished, or you know, it's hard, but the more those emotions take over, the harder it is for you to listen and for them to listen in kind. And it really dampens this really important feature of being curious. So, and if you notice, those are in blue. And so when I get into the strategies, these really key terms are in blue that have to do with more solutions on how to get yourself through these difficult conversations. So listen and be curious. I mean, so it's hard to be curious and be angry at the same time. And you might have a right to be angry, but it's you know, you recognize that that's going to dampen your ability to kind of get that probing question out there that might help unlock some of what's happening. Okay, so then, yes, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
So, pitfall number 1 and number 2, I noticed that at times people do not have the bad intentions, and maybe if you're assuming bad intentions or just attitude and such. But what if that is the case? So how do you prepare yourself? I mean, this is happening in your past. How do you prepare yourself mentally in the past? So I'm more speaking about past experience, how things have been better. How do you mentally prepare when you feel that it's going to be, not that intentions aren't good, but that they're not going to give you what you think? It's not going to be a fair discussion. I think that's fair.
So, all right, that's a great question. And I think all questions are great. I said that in the beginning. I'm going to answer that one now. I was wondering when that question was going to come up. The last time I did this presentation, it came up at the very end. And it's a hard question to answer because I'm not going to pretend to know what your situation was. And, you know, I do firmly believe that in most cases, you know, people don't mean to do harm. But in some situations, and this person, the last time I did this, he laid out a very detailed description of what happened, and it was hard not to feel like there was some bad intentions there. So I guess my experience is in you know, people are people, and I say that because a lot of times it comes down to your relationship with the other person. I hate to say that, but it's true. You know, like who you know, or, you know, like why does one family seem to get X amount of services for the child and another family with very similar, it's not similar exactly, of course, but there's some similarities, maybe don't have the same level of services. Why is that? And it comes down sometimes to the relationship. And if the relationship goes sour, then I'm not making excuses at all, because the person in a professional position might slip in that act professional, but act personal. And decisions might be made because they don't like the other person on the other side of the table. And I don't think that is often, but it does happen. It happens at work. It happens at homes. It happens, extended family. It happens, in a variety of situations. And so if, as long as humans are involved and there's not an AI unit that's making all decisions, you're going to have human events and experiences. And so that might be what happens. So what I would say to you is that you yourself, and when you're facing a situation that seems impossible, that to play your best game, to really put your best foot forward, to try to salvage whatever you can. Remember, there's a reason why you might be feeling anxious, because you don't control a whole lot, right? But if you being your best you can be by using not just these strategies, but just being very careful in how you communicate, not going personal back, you being as professional as you can as an advocate for your child, and speaking the truth, and not, like I've seen, this is not you, I've seen advocates go so personal that it just ruined the situation for the family. And they started attacking the character of the administrator. And at that point, I know it, and nothing's going to be resolved at that point. It becomes personal, whether people want to admit it or not, and nothing's going to be resolved. It's like, so if that person on the other side is attacking you, you have to do your best not to attack back in that forum, because it's just like, you're not going to get anywhere. And sometimes, this topic is so timely. I've had at least 2 conversations. Today's only Wednesday, right? So, but 2 conversations this week with parents that this exact topic came up. This mom yesterday read to me an email that she wanted to send to the school. And I'm glad she read it to me, because I'm like, well, I said, what did I say? I said, it gets to the strategies, but I convinced her to go more neutral and not make any assumptions based on what she was making the assumption of what they tended not to go to this meeting because they're angry at her. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that could be the case, but it could be the fact that they just couldn't make the meeting either, but you feel like you were put off. And so you're making that assumption. I didn't go through the whole thing with her, but I said, hey, I'm doing this talk tomorrow. She rewrote the email to say how she really felt. She felt like, hey, you didn't come to that meeting, and I thought you were, and I really do value your input, and I feel like the meeting would have been better if you were there. And please let me know next time if you're on the invite. It wasn't a PPT, it was a team meeting, so there's a little freedom on who can jump in and jump out. But the idea is that let me know. But she said what she had to say, but she didn't make the assumption that because she was going to say something like, I lost trust in you. I'm like, if you do that, I understand that that's how you're feeling, but you're making an assumption how their intention was. And if that wasn't their intentions, and now they see that email, it's going to get harder, not easier. So I guess the answer might be, do the best you can to stay the course and not get roped in by these pitfalls, and use some of these strategies we'll get to. Yeah.
So how do you, or how would I, having let's say a child experience, not bring it to the next, to the new team, because
So
as humans, you have, go off based on your experience, and
Right.
not to have that initial.
Yeah.
strike.
Well, you're right, because if something goes bad, when you're put back in that familiar environment,
Restate the question, because that
Oh,
way the
gotcha.
Zoom will pick up the question.
oh, excellent. So your question was, based on some of these prior experiences that didn't turn out well, they were bad, when you go into something that's similar in the future, how do you not? Okay, very good point, because we assign we have environmental cues. It could be the table, it could be the sitting position, it could be the person at the other end, who was there the last time. So we assign environmental cues to, our experiences. And so you will, whether you want to or not, you're going to probably start feeling some of those emotions again. And any strong emotion you have that's tied to something in the environment, when you come across it again, you tend to have that against a strong emotion. So what I would suggest is that we look at that question again. You can remind me at the end of this presentation, because I think based on that, you can identify on one column, hey, these are the pitfalls based on my prior experience. These are the strategies I'm going to try to do. And this is my cheat sheet when I go in. But you're human. So you being aware of that is huge. Imagine how much harder it is when you're not aware of that. Like you're going in blind practically, right? But now you're like, okay, this could set me off. I have reason to be set off. This could be so, and so, yeah, right? Yeah.
I don't know how much this question is just for me. My guess is it's not, but so I was thinking about when you were talking about how anxiety is a response to things you can't control. I was thinking about how I've had anxiety about lots of things in my life, but in particular, having a kid with special needs, in particular, behavioral special needs, there's a particular kind of anxiety because it's not only me who's like, oh, I can't control this. It's like all the other adults in the world are like, oh, can you fix that now? And like, I feel like I have this conversation all the time with family members, sports coaches, teachers, everyone, and they're like, this happened, and I'm like, are you telling me, like, what exactly is your goal right now to tell me this, and what exactly are your expectations of what you think I should do? And so that's like a multi-layered anxiety, because it's not just me who feels like I should fix it, it's like the person on the other end of the phone too. And so and then your next thing is that triangulation, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's why they're calling. They just want like a third party there to be like, oh yes, I hear you, that was hard. Yep, no, that we don't support that behavior. Yep, you're right. I'm just kind of wondering about that particular interaction when like other systems reach out to the parent.
Right. So your question is, a part of your question was, if this was related to what I can control, what I can't control, and the more I can't control, the more anxiety I'm feeling. And so sometimes I get a question or a request to control something about my child when I'm not even there, right? And how do I handle that? Because it's hard enough to control situations when you are there. It's really hard to have some control when you're not even there at all. So that makes you're anxious too, right? Does that like increase your anxiety around the whole thing and not even know how to respond?
Yeah.
Okay.
And and I guess I'm just wondering about like a respectful response that
Right.
acknowledges their feelings,
Right.
but and so that we're working on it. Yep.
Let's use the coach as an example. That's a good one, I think. They're all good, but okay. So that's frustrating, right? I mean, I can't pretend to know what you're feeling, but I would feel frustrated because I'm working, I put in so much time and effort in helping my child, and I can't be everywhere. I can't do everything. And now you're asking me, you're complaining about this, and I'm supposed to somehow fix this. That's frustrating and very anxiety provoking for me. This is what I would do, and I think it is triangulation. I think on one level, the coach is trying to pull you in because there's stress now between your child and the coach. And I don't mean like it's stressful, okay? And pulling you in, suggesting even that you can fix it, right? Would mean that if you don't, well, maybe it's not all his fault, it's your fault too, because can't you know him best? Can't you say something or do something and make sure he's okay the next time he shows up, whatever. So I think one way around this is to identify what that person's experiencing. They're experiencing anxiety too, right? It's a human condition we have. And So you don't have to say, oh, you're anxious, but you can be like, you know, he wants to control this if he could. He can't. Henceforth, he's got anxiety. Now he's trying to figure it out, and he's coming out to you to try to resolve it. So one thing you can say is like, you know what? I know exactly what you're going through because this happens all the time. And I know how I would handle this in this situation, but being here, on the field or whatever, and I'm not here, I think together we have to come up with some kind of solution now. So in meeting, like, I'm glad you told me. I don't have all the answers because I'm not there, and this is your team, but I want to help, but we have to work together in figuring this out. And that might mean, so next time I drop him off, if you can't do this, I'm going to pretend I'm leaving, but I'm going to pull over there. I'm just going to watch and see how he acts in certain situations. And then, maybe you and I can brainstorm on how to resolve that. Because you probably do have some ideas, but it's not supposed to fall all on you though. It's together we can figure this out. I would really stress that, like, together we can figure this out. There's nothing that can't be figured out, by the way. It's, as a BCBA, like as a behavioralist, using polybehavioral on that, it's human behavior. I mean, there's very few things that can't be figured out, right?
Can I just?
Yeah.
So all of that feels very appropriate to me. Sometimes I feel like the adults are, once we've done that, they're still calling and you want to tell me or I've said all those things and you still want to tell me every single thing.
Right.
And then I'm like, wow, now I need to manage all of your feelings.
Right.
And so when do you just kind of say like, and with the assessment then?
So I would do the first thing we talked about, like just try to go as far as you can with that. But you know by now. I don't know how old your daughter or son is, but you probably know by now that certain people are more gifted than others. Some people are going to be able to handle a situation hands down, and others just won't be able to. It just won't. And, it comes in kind of recognizing that, like, look, there's a limitation to what that person can and cannot do based on their own profile, who they are in that kind of situation. And then you're not there. So it's, I think some things, like, you have to make a decision, like, if this is causing me too much stress, then maybe there's another person or something else I have to look for, because that person never calls me. Like, it's probably like someone who might even, like, it's similar maybe to someone who might come and watch your child when you're out of the house. Like, if you want to go out for the night, like, some people you'll never hear from, and they seem to somehow manage it, and like Mary Poppins, like, right? And then other people are like, it's a house is a wreck and everything went completely upside down, and you'll never call that person back. So it's like, but you can't pick and choose coaches like that, like babysitters. So it's like, you're kind of stuck. I get that. But, maybe, like, instead of like trying to solve something you can't solve, because you can't change that person. If you can try to work together, and if there's a little bit of improvement, then that might be what you get. If there's no improvement, despite working with them, then, you're going to say, well, he just doesn't have what it takes. But it's not your problem. But you might have, I have to look at all alternatives. Like, where else can he go? What else can he do? Yeah.
It might be too that just the coach feels an obligation to part of the feel that way. And so you can simply acknowledge it, say, yeah, that is the law of items, and you have to do it in addition to all the other things, right? So behavior, or you just need to be blocked and just acknowledge it. They may feel obligated that they have to tell you each time.
This has to relate to pitfall number 3. I'll get to your question in a second, which, it's just a tiny little section here and we'll move on, is that if you start feeling like there's something that's wrong with how you're parenting, or that you don't have all the answers, and there's something wrong or a deficit, that's pitfall number 3. This is not meant to be a blow to who you are as a parent, just because you don't have all the answers and you're not there. So it's kind of like recognizing that boundary. Otherwise, it becomes, if you really feel like, wow, this person's really knocking me down and I feel horrible, then, the chances of finding any solution or having enough energy to deal with it is hard. is even harder than before. So that's the pitfall number 3. It's like, you know, what am I thinking? The truth assumption. What am I feeling? Are my emotions getting the best of me? Am I saying something I don't want to say, regret, or in the email or person? And then, you know, if I really feel like I'm vulnerable and like this is knocking me down, then, you know, you got to deal with that part before you can really move forward, because you're too compromised in that way to kind of help out your situation. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, like, that happened to me before. I feel like normally with someone that does not have a child with special needs and they just don't understand. And if it gets to the, like, a point where you have to maybe educate them on, you know, how to, what maybe your child, like, what would help your child in that situation, and help them understand the challenges, maybe they would understand it better. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to get into some ways of how to define what is actually happening there. Because again, these gross statements like, you know, I don't know what he's saying, but like, you know, he's not into it, or he doesn't want to be here, or he's, you know, running across the field, he's not participating, whatever it is, you know, or he, you know, whatever it is, these are just blanket statements. And it's like, without any details, it's like, what do I do with that? So we'll get a little bit further down. There might be some other stuff that pertains to what you just asked. So now we're into strategies, right? Let me just scroll up here a little bit. Perfect. So we talked about these pitfalls, being aware of them. Now we're going to say, okay, now that we might have a little cheat sheet and kind of remind yourself that, remember that truth assumption we talked about on the level 1? Well, now here are some strategies to deal with that. So the overall goal is to shift. This is hard to do sometimes. This is hard for me. Shift from, you know, proving that you're right, or that you have, you know, that you know what's happening, to try to really understanding more of what the other person's saying, even if you don't like hearing what they have to say. Like, what are they truly saying? So that's where that be curious thing is. Like, you know, well, what is this person seeing that I don't know? Or what's literally happening here that causes my son or daughter to, you know, completely give up, or not go to class, or not participate? Like, there's something that's happening that's getting in the way. You know, what is it? Like, you know, is it the other people? Is it just the time of the day? Is it that he's hungry? Or is it that he wanted to be home instead? Or, you know, it can be lots of different things. But, you know, trying to like be curious, like, what's behind some of this? And that, you know, the more curious you are, you're realizing that you don't, you know, like, there's more for me to learn here, and I don't mind I get all the answers, but you know, at least I'm looking for something that I don't have yet. This active listening, I'm sure you heard this before. It's like an old strategy. Active listening is hearing what the person just said and paraphrasing back. So what you just said was, if I understand correctly, you just said blank, blank, blank. Am I right? And because you want to make sure that you understood them, but you can also ask the person, can you please repeat back what I'm about to say? So we're on the same page. My son or daughter, and you kind of go through what you have to say, not too long, just, you know, some points here. Now, can you please paraphrase back so I know we're on the same page? Because as you probably know, a lot of times if that person is, you know, dealing with their own anxieties or frustrations or whatever, or they're trying to, like, you know, they're waiting for the next meeting to start, whatever it is, like, they might not hear you. And so active listening is demonstrating full circle that we're on the same page, that we repeat back. And it's golden when it comes to your own kids. Like, I can't tell you how many times I thought repeating 3 times would do the trick. It doesn't. Not until they say back exactly what they have to say. And I'm like, okay, right? So that active listening is helpful. Be ready for differences of opinion. Like, be ready for it. It's gonna happen. You know, different perspective taking. You don't have to pretend to agree or like what you're hearing, but at least knowing where that person's coming from, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, it's going to help you be able to, you know, get to that question that, okay, let's find this. Okay, I hear what you're saying. And you can even say, to be perfectly honest, I don't entirely agree with your conclusion, but you're telling me what you're experiencing, and that I understand. I mean, we all want to be validated, and that opens up a person's mind a little bit to what comes next, if you can do that. So I'm not asking you to again, to like accept, but the understanding is allowing you then to craft your question or your response in a way where it might get to the heart of what the problem is. So there's some examples, some open-ended questions like, can you say a little bit more about how you see things? Or what information might you have that I don't? And these are just examples. Are you reacting to something I did say? How do you feel about all this? Or, where are you with this? Please say more and why this is important to you. Now, one of those is not an open question. Anybody know which one is not an open question? There's actually a closed-ended question in there. I was going to change it, but I was like, let's keep it in there as an example. So the third one, are you reacting to something I did or say? That's a yes, no. So I left it there. It shouldn't be there. It should say something like, what am I saying that that you're finding difficult? Or what am I saying that you don't understand or agree with? Something like that. But because these yes, no ones, they don't lead very far. And they don't really add to information. They basically, if you're trying to, lawyers, nothing against lawyers. I went to law school for a little bit. It's fine. But sometimes you need to get to the bottom of something, and yes, no is a very helpful thing. Yes, no, but that's not going to lead to solutions. You want to, because sometimes when you get into a yes, no question format, you're trying to prove something. And the other person knows it, and it doesn't, it basically, again, you're not trying to prove your situation right now. You're just trying to understand and then build a solution together. So open-ended is better. It can be better. Be as like what is happening? And so I'll give you some examples. Jay comes in and he seems so tired. He has very little energy. You hear that? Now that's different than saying during morning meeting, Jake will put his head on his desk and not look toward the teacher. Sometimes he also fidgets with items in his desk, which may further keep him from understanding what the upcoming transition or expectation is and what will it be about. So they're basically, they're meant to say two different things, same thing, but they say, the second example says way, way more. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because when you get into a conversation with someone, you want a solution focus or problem solver, you got to get as much information as you can. And so, because otherwise there's nothing to work on. Now, this is the first thing in applied behavioral analysis. It's the first thing they say, define the behavior, define the behavior, define the behavior. And to the point where it's like a script. And if I define the behavior well enough, that means any one of us can act it out and it'll be relatively similar. But my version of not paying attention and your version of not paying attention, your version of being lethargic, my version of being lethargic or not wanting to be here or whatever, these are all just assumptions or conclusions, but they don't define anything. There's nothing. My acting out, not being interested is way different than you acting out, not being interested. So we are so far apart. To get closer, let's talk concretely. What exactly is happening? Another example is Sally's a hard time settling down. She does not stay focused long enough to complete her work. And the more concrete version of that is Sally periodically tries to engage her classmates during independent work by showing them items or materials that do not pertain to the work at hand. Sally will get up multiple times to sharpen her pencil or ask to use the bathroom. Now that is more information. Now we know, okay. And we can drill down, okay. And not that you're in a position to like problem solve this, but working with the teacher or the team and identifying these things that aren't going well in this much detail will help them begin to turn their attention to, okay, well, is the work too hard, or does she need more adult proximity? Because adult proximity, closer you stand next to someone, sometimes the more compliant it might be. Or do we schedule in a bathroom break, or do we make sure she has 3 sharpened pencils in the begin with? Like these are lots of little, they call them antecedent strategies. Lots of strategies you do before there's a challenge or while the event's occurring that might deal with a lot of the stuff. And the bottom line is that if you give her all the sharpened pencils you want, you give her the bathroom break, you give her some downtime to hang out with some friends, if all that's taken care of and she's still, well, then maybe the work's not, maybe she doesn't understand the work. But the point is you got to have enough information to Otherwise it's like, well, how long have you been teaching? Or what do you mean I'm not feeding? What do you mean you don't have breakfast in the morning? She says you have breakfast. Of course she has breakfast. Like, there's lots, kids will say the funniest things. So it's okay. Yeah, yes.
So if you're getting the not responses, you and parents are around and say, well, can you give me an example?
Yeah. But say, like I heard, or you could say something like, I understand that when we try to change behavior, the more accurate or detailed, I say detailed, accurate's a loaded word. The more detailed we can get, the better we know or how we can change behavior. So like as much detail as you can give me, like literally. The other one is get organized. So if you're looking for, if someone says, oh, what do you want for the holidays? Say Staples gift card, please. So there's some, when I don't do this much anymore. A lot of my clients are older. Well, most of my client base is older. Some of them I aged out and all that, the school system. But bottom line is I used to go around Christmas when I had a lot of young clients and sometimes I gave a gift to the kid, sometimes, but I definitely gave one to the mom. Remember, this is the reason why I got into this field, parents. So I give them a little gift bag. In that gift bag, there was, like a pen, bunch of pens, some rubber bands, some clips, some sticky notes, stuff to help get organized for your next meeting or whatever it is. Get organized. Like the more you feel organized, a cheat sheet and all that stuff like that. So this is not a therapy presentation, but the answer to anxiety is like, hey, if I can't control something that leads to anxiety, again, finding small things to control, like setting my alarm 30 minutes earlier, having my cheat sheet in front of me, having everything organized, tabbed, ready to go, my full bottle of water, whatever it is, that you do control, that always lowers anxiety, right? So that's helpful. And then the other one is bring data. Now, one criticism deservedly that a lot of BCBAs have is, they get is like, all you think about is data. I think the world is turning into that. I hear the word data so many times now when it comes, some people use that as a crutch, like believe it or not, like, oh, you don't have data, sorry, kind of thing, or where's the data in that? So it could work both ways. But as a parent, I'm not suggesting you have a data sheet. I'm saying take information down and come with it to the meeting. I think one of the easiest ways is just using a calendar, and you can use a calendar with those large boxes and, or I've gone onto Word document, Microsoft Word, and you can go into template and open up a calendar and, and then write in, like type in if you want to get this organized. Like type it, or, whatever how you want to do it, but like, hey, what time he went to bed? What time he got up? Did Homer come home? Lots of things. Did his lunch come home eaten, happy? Like, basically you record this information. So that way, what time he went to bed, what time he got up. So that way they're like, oh, he's not sleeping. That 1 week after February break, I'm sorry, he was just like, he's kept falling asleep here. And maybe he was, because maybe you look at your calendar and say, you know what, you're right. He was getting up, or it can be like, actually, he was, according to this information I have here, he was sleeping pretty well. So maybe there's something else happening. Maybe he run by the physician to see if something's going on, why he's lethargic, even with good sleep, or maybe he's sleeping to get away from something. Who knows? But like you have information to share, and it empowers you. That's really what it comes down to. You're not trying to prove anything, but it empowers you because, what's it like to have the person in front of you open up a book with all this data and you're like, well, this is what I think. It's like, okay, that's important, but I have information too. I have my journal, or, I take pictures, or whatever. Yeah.
So speaking of data, and like I'm just listening to this data, I'm just feeling really kind of defeated because just going to share a little bit of background, but I had told the school I had concerns for like quite a few years, and then I ended up getting a diagnosis through a neuropsychologist. And so what happens if the school only helps with one of the diagnoses?
Right.
Where's the data there? There's no, I have the data.
Right.
Not We're not
Right.
acknowledging the neurotechnology is the other part of it.
So your point was, you did your due diligence, or you got an outside eval done, right?
Right,
That resulted in 2 different diagnoses.
right,
And the school said, okay, we recognize, or we will have one of these on the IEP,
Right.
but not the other.
right.
Okay. Now, my limitation is knowing procedurally, how many diagnoses they can have in an IEP. I just don't know. Or I've heard before, like, it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is, he still gets the same services. Like, I've heard that too. I don't know if that's always true, but so I would run that, to be perfectly honest, I would run that question by someone has the training to know exactly procedurally, is that correct or not? Or no. And, and so that would be an advocate, like a good advocate,
Yeah,
or,
I actually did have one, and I brought the neuropsychologist to the meeting, and
Mhm.
it was like over 2 hours, and the neuropsychologist was like, you can't argue with these numbers, and the school was like, well, I see what you're saying, but we're looking at, like a whole picture, and we're gonna focus on that.
right.
But
Right. I think, so I've had some of the most brilliant doctors at the meetings, some of them I highly respect, and they can be very helpful, especially when they're invited by the school system. But if they're not invited and you invite them, then sometimes it's, it's acknowledged. But they might really might have a different opinion, and they might disagree, right? And so this is where I would go more in the direction of like a trained advocate in special ed law and procedures, because you might be in a position to say, well, you need to provide this assessment to rule out this diagnosis then on your end. Like, you can't just say it doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I didn't have an advocate. It was pretty much like, it has to be this.
Like, we don't want to, yeah, and
I don't know.
you don't want to go there because that does,
Yeah.
there's benefits, and well, it's not benefits, but like you feel like you're really stuck, and it does hurt also,
So
but,
now I'm just, yeah, when you speak about the data,
right.
I just feel like I'm stuck.
So, yeah,
Do you have any particular questions for us? We can have a question. I don't know.
that's right. You're not in this alone. You have a whole organization behind you. Seriously. But it's a good question. I don't have a complete answer for you, but I definitely think you shouldn't give up in asking that question, right? And don't stop taking data. Like that, maybe whatever that other diagnosis is, maybe there's some things you can record in your experience during the week that, verifies that from your end, so, yeah.
Or maybe you can use that opportunity with your team to say, okay, well, you might disagree that these 3 things are something that are impacting the education, but maybe you can then, team, take the data on your end to see if he's also having difficulty in school. Have the opportunity to go back on the team and say, okay, we don't really have these issues. Let's try to take some data to show us that he's putting these on the minor than we should, all that stuff. So we can talk at the end, but just, just my brother, it's always an opportunity to gather data. So,
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so let me get to where I need to get. Sorry. Let's see here. It was just there. Okay. So here's a link on the bottom, page 6, communication system. Now, I've been at meetings that were all about communication systems, and sometimes people could be very defensive about communication systems, like not wanting to, I think sometimes people feel like they're putting themselves at risk or being, like vulnerable because they're communicating too much or whatever. There's a link here that helps with this a little bit. It's different communication systems, but like if things are going well, then maybe you don't need a communication system. No, I think communication is great, but if things aren't going well, then knowing kind of like how things are happening you waiting at the end of the month doesn't always help, or the end of the quarter for sure. Like you might need to know on a weekly basis, like what is happening, what's the highs and lows here, where is he succeeding, or where is she struggling the most? Because as the other end of this team here, the other part of the team, like me having this in real time, I can then begin to, in some cases you can kind of explore with your child, or you can be like, you know what, we tried something else. Like maybe we tried this new therapist or program or this new med or whatever, and maybe this is just not working. Like, but you having real time information. So communication systems are very important, and just recognize that sometimes they might get somebody might get a little bit uncomfortable you running that information and people signing things off and are busy teaching and all that. And you have to be real too. Like I don't think it's always realistic to have someone take even 3 to 5 minutes to write something, because that is percentage wise a decent amount of time, and that so it might not be that. There's not always, sometimes I think a quick pre-checklist, something that's already made in advance that you agree to, like, hey, just check these things off or circle this, something that's like, he was attending most of the time or half the time or less than half or whatever, just getting an idea of, how many people did he sit with at lunch? Is always a good one. Like, is he alone? Is he not alone? Who do you play with at recess? Like, this is something that can be recorded. That doesn't take long at all. And just having information is super helpful. Copies of lesson plans. This is something where I think it makes so much sense, and the research is there. Generalization strategies, like people used to think early on, I'm going way back, that the right way to generalize is you learn something in one environment, then you teach it in the second environment. But there's been enough evidence now that shows that teaching concurrently in 2 or 3 environments is very effective. So if someone's doing speech drills, or if they're doing, exercises with the OT or PT, or reading exercises, or social skills is a big one. If there's actually a social skills curriculum being used, you having that in real time, and by name of real time, I mean like by the week, end of the week or something like that, or daily would be nice, but at the very least a week, or because you want to be able to use the same language, like, if the child hears you use the same prompt and language in a social situation or with speech or reading that the teacher is using, or the specialist, to the child, that means a lot. Remember, developmentally, the more the systems work together and they're in union, the more the child's at ease and they develop in a good way. So, I don't understand why this should be much more transparent. And nowadays with the internet, like it's just like it's been on here for a long time now. But the point is that you can have this online. You don't have to send anything home. Just put it in the vault or the Google Classroom or whatever. I will do the effort of going on there, clicking it, printing it out. But I need to know the terms and the language and the prompts that you're using so that I can do that. Now, they have a reason to say, well, I don't want you to do some, like there might be some techniques or whatever that they don't want you to do because maybe if you do it the wrong way, it might, I don't know. But so for social reasons, that's never the case. Maybe for speech, maybe, but for like, OT, PT, even if they videotape the exercises, send that to me. I will play it and repeat here. That is very, very helpful. And that empowers you. And so this is about like, the strategies about like moving in the direction of finding solutions or ways to collaborate. Okay. So then we're up and now on top of the page. Here we go. So this is the part now where, belief versus intention. So remember I talked about that before? So now this is like you trying to like keep that in mind. Like, am I making a link between how I'm feeling or what I think they're intending? Like, this is like one of the strategies. And if you could have this like this cheat sheet, say, okay, this is number 2, try to disentangle this. And one of the best ways to do this is try to respond in a neutral way. Neutral. Now, there's some clients I work with that they've helped me with this strategy a lot because I know this really works well. Someone who deals with chronic anxiety or whatever, they might always go to the negative viewpoint of things like, oh, I'll never succeed, or this is too hard, or I can't do this, or, it could be lots of things. I'm not going to make the team, whatever. It's just a negative viewpoint. And I say, look, and he or she may not have a reason to be positive, like maybe they failed the last test. And so saying, I'm going to do great in this test is not realistic, so, being just positive. But neutral is an option. You know, so instead of saying I'm going to fail this test, or instead of being maybe a little unrealistic saying I'm going to nail this thing, say, you know what, I struggled last time, I did mess up. This is what I did different, and I'll do my best. That's just a neutral way of approaching it. It's not assigning any, conclusions to it. Now, in your situation, when you're working within a difficult conversation, you might be feeling like they don't trust you, or they're not hearing you, they don't believe you, or that that you have the wrong diagnosis, or you don't, whatever, that you don't understand how it's done here at school. It might be that way at home, but it's not here at school, like whatever, like, and so you're like, well, what's wrong with my home? Like, what are you saying? Like, so it's like, you might be having all these kinds of feelings and emotions about this and thoughts. And so it's like, okay, but let me get back, let me say what I need to say in a neutral way. And so instead of saying, I think home is perfectly fine, thank you, or doing everything I can, it's more like, okay, I understand there's a disconnect between this behavior from school and home. And, maybe if you let me know more of what you're doing there, I can transfer that into home, see how that works. Certainly, I know there's some things that are working at home, so I can also let you know about that. Like, just trying to be neutral about it. It can help you disentangle yourself from this like connection between what you think their intentions are. Okay, some of this stuff is basically right out of it's just like 101 kind of stuff, like being empathetic. All that means is not agreeing, right? Like, or not just knowing that they have a different opinion than yours. And look, I don't agree with that opinion, but I'm going to be honest that it is a different opinion, and you can call it out. And, but recognizing, okay, you have reason to believe that this is not the case. And this is what you're pointing to. I have reason to believe that this is something deeper than that. And if we don't address it, it's going to get worse. So, where we go from here is, please let me know on a daily basis, or at least on a weekly basis, how it's going, so that we can turn this around more quickly if it goes the wrong direction. So you're trying to understand where they're coming from. You're not like, basically burying it, and you're trying to focus on solutions. The solution thing is important. There's a whole therapy called solution-focused therapy. There's other therapies called narrative therapy, solution-focused therapy. It's all about looking for a way out. And even if it's nominal, just like little bits of improvement. So as a parent, the teacher, the special ed teacher, the case manager, for sure, sometimes the school administrator, but I don't know anybody else in a better situation than the parent sometimes, because you have your heart and soul in this. Not that the other people don't, but it's not their child. This is your child. And so there's a limit, I believe, as to how much commitment you would have. And I could be wrong in saying that. I might say that differently. I did this talk again in a couple of years, but I still don't think it can match the parents' level of commitment and entire the amount of hours and effort you put in. So I think, why am I saying all that? Because when it comes to you and your pivotal situation, you knocking on that door and using this solution type of focus stuff, like what's the details, tell me where it's breaking down, or hey, you don't think it's breaking down, tell me like the most challenging situation he succeeded in, because I want to celebrate this too. Like, you're telling me there's not a problem, so tell me how you're challenging him to test that. Is the work level high enough? Does he have to be on task long enough? Is there someone not standing next to him the whole time? Is he not being given the answers or prompted the answers? Whatever the situation might be, tell me how you're raising the bar, because I want to celebrate this. Like, as a parent, you're trying to move it in a direction where it's more hopeful. And, and that can be hard when you don't have hope. It's hard to have hope, right? But, hope is contagious. I've been in situations where, regardless of what's been happening, somehow that parent was able to reach down deep and grab that hope. And I can't tell you how much it helped. Because I get sometimes the advantages of hearing people talk behind closed doors. Like, sometimes I show up in meetings before they start. Sometimes I'm there after they end. And, sometimes people don't know where I stand, because I'm being, in some cases, not all cases, in some cases, I'm being contracted by the school system. So they're a client of mine, but the number one client, like the hierarchy, is the child and the family. And so it's like, do we say all this in front of Todd? Do we not say this in front of Todd? So sometimes they just do. And I get like a real insight as to what some of the thinking is. And I can't tell you how, on the one end, a hopeful, kind of optimistic, solution focused, hey, you know what? Things can always be get better. Let's try to figure this out. Goes a long way. And I tell parents all the time, I was like, not everybody sometimes these teams are way big. Like you get 11 people sitting around the table, or maybe it's not that big, maybe it's 6 or 8, but man, how hard is it to try to get everybody on the same page? And that's like the bigger the team, the harder it is. Everybody comes with their own baggage. Everyone comes with their own beliefs and conclusions and all that. I always say, look, try to find that 1 or 2 people on that team that as best as you can get it and help and can relate to you and you to them and you can work together, because sometimes it's speech, sometimes it's the teacher, sometimes it's the OT, sometimes you don't. Now the paraprofessionals get to come to the meetings, but it's somebody, like that really, is able to work with you. It might not be the entire team. There might be someone who just this doesn't, is stretched too thin. That's what I want to say. And that could be a reality that really makes it difficult for that person to hear you and to respond to you in a timely way. But finding somebody on that team that you can work with, it might not be everybody, but being hopeful, leads to things, like I kind of listed in here. I'm sorry, I'm trying to scroll. There we go. So you can see what I can see. So, it just leads to these positive outcomes. It's reflection, intelligent action, imagination. I mean, this list could be like 20 items on there, but these are important ones. And, and I've always been impressed. There are some situations, teams and families, both school teams and families, where the level of challenge was through the roof high, like just medical, behavioral, cognitive, just, hard. And regardless of that family or that team in some situations was, able to always see that silver lining. Hey, he only bit 2 people today instead of 10 people. But the point is it's going down. But the point is that there's always, it's like, that's part of the profile, saying that some people just don't have that profile. That's just, you can't make that. That's just who they are. But they do manage their anxiety in a very good way. They manage their anxiety in a very good way. They, and sometimes it's the family. There's one client I've had for years, and he's one of the most complicated persons in the world. And the mom has always been able to, yeah, but at least I got this help, or I got, I got more sleep last night, or whatever case is. She's able to always be able to like keep her head above water, and she keeps her anxiety down. And then the opposite is true. Sometimes there's someone, in my opinion, that might have a much less significant challenge and the team's overwhelmed, school or the family might be overwhelmed. And because their anxiety, it's just about how to raise their anxiety level. And so anxiety is what I'm trying to say, doesn't always, it's not a cause and effect relationship between the amount of difficulty and the amount of anxiety. Sometimes it could be a high difficult, low anxiety, or high or low. So it just depends on how the person processes it and experiences it. So that all being said, being hopeful, especially when others are not, can go a long way, because not being hopeful or being down can lead to this other stuff, self-doubt, fatalism. And I've been in situations where the team is like, there should be, I think the team might be like, the teacher or somebody like, there's probably a better program for them. And maybe there is. But I've been in situations where I could not tell the parent that the team is absolutely not able to do it. I couldn't tell it because it would be wrong to say it in that way, but they just didn't see them getting to the end of the day, each and every day. They just were out. They were just tapped out. And I'm like, in that situation, I don't know how you can make things work. So in some cases, another place would be more optimistic and higher energy and all that, but it's tough. So having that hope goes a long way. I'm sorry, you had a question.
I was gonna say, back when you were talking about how we have different perspectives. Yes, a lot of us do all, us in the school team, not to
I've ran into where we all agree there's a problem. The following resources for this. I find that it's always right resources year after year. Person behavior never changes. It's going to stay resource, going towards it. We've kind of gotten to be, not real and we conferences, lots of private. I feel like the goal of helping us, like, parents' goal is here, and the school goal is how can I contain the cost. So, we'll help them within these prescribed things that we normally do. But then, that's kind of it. So I feel we are at an adversarial. And yes, we always have hope that this year will be different. But I think getting to the heart of the matter is, yes, it's good to stay positive and have hope and all that. I always want to see the school come back with how this year's going to be different. I don't see any differences in the PPT. I don't see any additional resources. I don't see any additional supports. I don't see that we even followed the PPT last week because of COVID, so we didn't do XYZ. So I guess I don't know how to address that. But maybe at the end, we can talk about that relationship and how our goals are maybe different.
Well, so to just capture, I think the thrust of what you're saying is sometimes you are saying your expectations or what you feel could be done is up here, and the school might be down here. So there's a gap.
There's a disparity between our
Right.
beliefs, I think.
Right. So, okay, so I think that is a couple of different things. I think that's a hard reality. I agree with that. I think it's somewhat not subjective. It is case by case, because I have seen some situations where I was blown away by what the school system did. Like, wow, you did that, and like you hired his brother to work with, like whoa, talk about out of the box. No, but seriously, there's been some crazy things that some school systems have been able to do, and then not. And why is there such a difference? Why? I think it is case by case, which doesn't help your situation out. But I think one of the hard realities that I don't have a real good answer to, but the bar is the bar has been set by a number of different standards and backed up by what's that legally they're committed to have to do. And your bar might be higher than theirs, right? Often is.
Yeah, the bar is different, because now the bar has been said, oh, well, we can't really meet your needs within the 12 years, so we're just gonna go and push it off to 22, birthday at 22.
Right.
And so we're gonna deal with it next
Right.
year. So again, we're at that point of next year. And I just feel like, okay, well, is there any other options? And we just don't know, even though there are other options that we've explored privately.
Right. Right.
I'm just saying that
There is. I won't gloss over that. Sometimes you get locked in a situation where the school is doing what they have to do, right? But they won't go above and beyond. And because they don't have, and not because they don't have to, I'm assigning attention to that. They might feel, that's where sometimes two different perspectives come in, like, hey, I'm doing what I need to do. This is what I've been mandated to do. I'm doing this. I don't think it's, and I'm not saying this is true, but someone might be thinking like, I don't know if it's necessarily fair to apply this X amount of resources to this person when I can't do that for everybody. And so what am I going to do? And that person, it's not about right or wrong. It's about that's just where the person is. But as a parent, I don't think you have to accept that, but understanding might help, because, you know, that's something that when I say it's a hard reality, that might be something that you just can't alter, you know. But you take it as far as you can, and then you try to supplement with whatever you're able to. Not everybody can afford to do that, but there, you know, there's been some families that I've worked with and been able to find resources when I didn't think resources existed, you know, whether it's DBS, whether it's Title 19 funded services like Constellation, which is an agency, or whether, you know, it's going to their church, or whether it's, you know, finding, you know, doing fundraisers, or even like crowdfunding. Like, believe it or not, people find ways, but I think you're fooling yourself if you think the school's gonna always meet your expectations, because they're not. That is not. Okay, but thanks for the question too. So this last part is pretty straightforward. We talked about a lot of strategies and how to adjust your thoughts and how to go solution focused and know what you're thinking and how it relates to your feelings. You know, being aware of your emotions, you know, like, it's going to be natural for you to have a strong reaction. This is your child. It's not like you're buying a car. Some people have strong reactions to buying a car, right? And it's just like, oh God, I hate to do that. Talk about triggers. But like, that's nothing compared to the future of your child. Like, this is much more, it's heavier thing. So, you know, so these strong feelings, these strong reactions are going to be there. You come across, you see someone across that meeting, like there's another family I'm working with where like, oh, that case manager didn't work out, you know, 5 years ago, and now the person's back. I just don't know how this is going to work, because they had a bad experience, and I don't blame them. But the school's not obligated to change case managers on that. So it's like, you know, so what do? It's like refusing to accept it isn't going to help, you know, because you just don't have the power, you don't have control to change the case manager. You know, the parent doesn't. So, you know, so it's like, okay, well, what can I do to find ways to work with this person as best as I can, to take it as far as I can? You know, there's a couple things here. I said before, like, remember how how you feel someone's intentions are based on how you're experiencing something. That, to try to walk away with that. There's another one too, like these I statements, like trying to like navigate through your emotions using I statements. You've heard it over and over again, but very people talk about the word because. Because does not get the credit it should get. There's research that backs up the word because. I can go into a store, in a random store, and try to cut in front of line and say, hey, do you mind if I just cut in front of you here? And, you know, most people, if they're not like thinking I'm weird or like just don't say anything, are gonna be like, excuse me? You know what that means? You're like, no. But if I say something like, do you mind if I cut in line here? Because, you know, my babysitter just called and she's got to leave and I got to get home real quick so I can get her because she has some kind of family emergency. And, you know, some people are going to say no stuff, but more people say yes. Now you're saying, oh, Todd, come on. You know, it's because, you know, you had a good reason. That's true. What I'm saying is a lot of you have good reasons for what you want to say. If you frame it in a because, it forces you to identify what those reasons are. And you're able to let the other person know. And then you can, you know, they say no, that person said no, and they said no. Okay, I can't control that. But at least I can put my best foot forward and identify why I'm asking this. Anyways, they did this study where they had these people come, these grad kids come, walk up to random people, ask the most ridiculous things. You know, can I borrow $5? Can I use your phone? Whatever. And, you know, sure enough, when they had same people, different, and then a different group of people they approached and they used word because, they were able to get like a high success rate. And it's just like, so I tell kids all the time, when you're asking to stay up late, your parents say because you must have a good reason, right? And so, and they can say no, but at least you're putting your best foot forward. Not because, and it's not because you're not fair, or it's like, you know, or because you're, you know, you don't know what you're doing, your job, whatever. You're not saying that, you're not coming with a conclusion. You're saying that because this is what's going on in my world, or what's happening to me or my child. So that's a big one, and that can kind of help navigate through some of those emotions. There's another fun technique called SOLAR technique, which is, it just is just an acronym. There's a link there. It's how you position yourself. Believe it or not, there's a lot of information there. Eye contact. If you look down, people think you're hiding something. Like you look at the person, you relax, you try to be relaxed. Talk about sensory. Have a sensory item with you. Like, this is my favorite thing to keep with me, or my magic pen from Disney World. I'm holding this at this meeting. I'm looking at it, clutching it. It's like you have things that kind of help you kind of stay focused and present yourself the way you want to present it. And I have another tip. It's not on the slide, but sometimes less is more. So the littlest things sometimes make the kids think it's amazing. So it turns out, like when I say less or more, sometimes just listening more and less talking will help you out. The word listen and the word silent are spelled with the exact same letters. And so I never write that on the board. Kids are like, oh, wow, silent, listen, yeah. So, but silence is a really cool thing. Whenever you feel like you're being cornered, I would encourage you to recognize that and begin to talk less or say less and listen more, but also just be silent more. In therapy, in grad school, they teach the therapist, when you want to put the client or the family in stress, don't say a word, just stare at them. I've used this a million times with my own clients. And I'm like, watch. And I just like start staring at them. I give them a heads up so they don't think I'm just wacky. And they're like, all right, Ray. I said, yeah, So, sometimes silence is an important thing. But if you feel like you're back against the corner, like just start to be quiet and say less and just start listening and staring a little bit. And it might knock them off a little bit of where they are. And then you can kind of come in with your very carefully crafted solution-focused statement. The other thing too is they say, like, in sales, right? In negotiations, the first person to talk. So you offer something and you just like listen, you just quiet. And you might find yourself that they're doing the same thing sometimes, but it's like just be silent and just let that go for a while and see where that takes you. And then come with your delivery, with what you want to say. The comedians use that all the time. They use that. The good comedians use that silent, boom, the punchline. So that works with, the last thing I have to say is, as parents, remember triangulation? Kids will want parents to not agree on certain things like computer time, screen time, bedtime, who's allowed this or that. And often sometimes drives a wedge between the parents. So if you want to really throw your child off, tell your spouse, say, look, when it comes to us, we're going to say what you're going to have to say, and we're just going to stare at them. And I will guarantee you, after they're going to be like, what is your problem? And they'll have to leave and walk away. They can't maintain themselves in that vacuum. And the ones that can talk a lot will keep going. And all of a sudden they realize you're not saying anything. Did you hear me? Did you hear me? And you're just going to stare at them. And if you can put your arms around each other and just stare at them together, it's a paradox. It scares the heck out of them, but it also makes them feel good inside, but it scares the heck out of them. Like, oh my gosh, it is too. That's what. So, and at the meetings too, if your spouse can come, or whatever, just, or talk to your advocate or whoever's, you say, hey, take my cue. Let's just slow it down. Let's just listen and just let them do most of the in certain situations. But anyways, for your kids, that's a really neat thing. Okay, then this is the level 3 strategies about your self-image. This is something like, I don't know if everyone has a was a model or something they live by. I think it might help to identify what yours is. In that, like, for example, when you're being challenged, when you think that people don't respect or understand your situation, or that you don't think they're a good parent, or you start to doubt yourself or wonder, why didn't I think of that or ask that before, or this or that, you start to wonder, just remember, maybe write down something and have it there in front of you. It says something like, that who you are and all the value you give your child and your family, and in some cases the world, all the value you give them, unlimited in some cases, and remind yourself that no one's perfect. So like just being solid with who you are and being okay with the imperfections, but also with all the effort and how your heart is in the right place and all that will help you sometimes when you get to the point where, you're feeling attacked, and again, that might not actually be happening, or it might be happening, but you're feeling it regardless. And so you have that statement, you're holding on to that. Sometimes it also helps, when you do that, a little bit of mindfulness, like mindfulness goes a long way when it comes to trying to remember, like, what am I picking up on here? Like, how are they feeling? Where are we missing each other? What I'm feeling this, does that mean that's their intentions? Like having this, maybe looking at your cheat sheet, but like trying to stay in the moment. Anxiety is always based in the future. It could be 2 seconds from now. It could be a minute from now, a year from now, a week, whatever. It's always in the future. Anxiety is never about the moment. The moment is the moment. It literally is happening as each second goes by. If you ground yourself in the moment, right, and just, breathe and ground yourself in the moment, and, say the statement of how awesome you are as a parent and how, you do anything for your child and you're trying your best, that will help you not be, it could help you not be as flustered much and kind of keep to your game plan. Yeah, in the moment. So, okay, so conclusion basically is kind of like, this is like in a nutshell, this is kind of going from wanting to prove a point, getting them to do what I want and delivering a message, to sharing information and asking questions, expressing your emotions and understanding, and developing a group solution. Now, I know in some situations, if there's a particular person at the meeting who the relationship has gone sour and it's hard, that can make it more difficult. And maybe it's like, because it's your child at stake, right? I mean, bottom line is they might have the same job years after your child ages out, and they're doing the same thing. So you have your moment, and so it might make sense outside of the meeting before and say, hey, we had off on the wrong foot. I want here and now and then, and I'm committed to try to make this work. And we might not see eye to eye, but I'm committed to try to remain professional at this meeting. We keep the son or daughter as a center, and just that little thing before the meeting might go a long way, because people do regress to their own vulnerabilities. If someone feels like they're being attacked, whether you meant that or not, or last time the meeting didn't go well for you, it probably might not have gone well for them either. And so they're like, oh, I've been at those meetings, people are like, okay, here we go. So it's like, here comes the parents. Do we let them in? Do we let them in yet? Is everybody here? Yeah, by the way, I always think that's a crazy thing. But someone should tell somebody something like, wait, the parents wait, and then until you're all assembled, just sends the wrong message, but that's them managing their own anxiety. I'm convinced of that. What can I control? I control when the meeting starts. It's like, okay, so we're all human. And but anyways, so it's about this shift, and it's these difficult conversations come with these learning conversations and so forth. That's just this last slide I have here. It requires a lot of effort. Let me see if I can get down to it. All right, here it is. There it goes. Okay, here it is. So, I mean, this is just, I don't mean to be cute. It is awkward. It's going to take work, but I promise you that it will work better than it did before. That's the main reason. And it's not about being perfect. It's not about hitting a home run. It's about getting closer and closer on the same page, recognizing that you may never be on the same page, exactly because they have a different set of expectations of you. They don't have to go as far as you do as the parent. But you can still try to get the most out of them. And then these are the two books I talked about. I have something I want to show you real quick, but just a little commercial actually. But any questions? You had some really good questions before. Yeah.
Hi, my son has turned 15, which means he is now able to participate in meetings. I have a lot of anxiety around that. I don't want to coach him in any direction, but I want him to be prepared for the situation. He has his own anxiety, pressure, and all sorts of other things, and he's never been in one of these meetings before, obviously. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about managing the situation when your child is a part of the meeting, and also as parents, how we can help our child handle the meeting.
Okay, good. Great question. So a couple of different thoughts in that. And your question was, my child's now 15 and he's going to be attending his first, PPT meeting. And, I don't want to, you said I don't want to coach him or like put words in his mouth, whatever, like I'm paraphrasing, but, I want him to be prepared and ready and relaxed, basically. So I think a couple things. One, I would help him understand, first of all, I would start with the very basic stuff. Like if you have an agenda, right, I guess you have to print it out and say, look, this is the format of the meeting. This is exactly how it's going to go. And it should be around an hour, right? And I don't know what your intentions are, whether he's there for the full meeting or part of the meeting, whatever, but you are allowed to get up, go to the bathroom, you're not stuck there. You can, just give them some basics like that and how the format is. And then that, maybe, you're going to see mom and dad and them agree on some things and maybe disagree on some things, which is important and normal. It doesn't mean we don't like each other. And we're all here working together. And so you don't have to be nervous about anything. We're all going to work together. And usually when the students is there, usually everybody is on their best behavior at that point, which is a good thing. But it's like, so it's like, yeah, you're going to see Mr. So and Mrs. So-and-so, and you're going to see some nice things. And then they might say some things that might not be going as well, but that's important because we're all here together. No one's going to get in trouble. You say nothing bad can happen. Like, you're never going to get in trouble because of anybody said anything at this meeting. Like, you let him know that, perhaps. Let him also know that this is just a meeting. It's not the meeting. There's lots of meetings. This is just a meeting. So don't worry about it. Nothing, nothing's going to get ruined or whatever. Nothing's, this happens all the time, And I mean, those are just some suggestions, but I think maybe give him a script of some things he might want to say. Like if there's something he wants to say, having him have a version of that ahead of time. Sick index card, you can read it or you can just say it if there's anything he wants to say. That's a way to that's a thing you can control that lowers your anxiety. Anything you control, printing out the agenda, having coaching, not coaching, but having him a script, letting him know that no one's against each other, everything's okay, you're not gonna get in trouble, everything's good. It's not like going to the principal's office or anything like that. It's good, even though he might be there. It's like it's okay. Yeah.
Also, they don't have to go. So I always give my daughter the action here's what we're going to do, here's what we're going to talk about. But if you have an adversarial my daughter, she chose not to. When we were doing business speaking Zoom, she might pop in a little bit, and then she chose not. Yes, giving them all of the information up front, and letting them make decisions. But I will also let them know it's very important. This is how we're setting up how you're going to go to school, how you're going to do your how much time we're going to spend in academic lab, how much time we're going to spend with each teacher. Are we going to get weekly updates? What format is the weekly update going to take? So it is important that we have your input on this, because if we set something up and you don't like it, you're not stuck with it then. So I also made sure they understood the pros and cons of attending.
Good. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for my daughter, we just go in the beginning, she was there for the start. And she would, talk about what she was doing well, not doing well, and then because then we had other things that we needed that she was. Especially the first couple of meetings, where you kind of getting all that.
Right. Okay, questions? Any other questions? Yes.
What if you find the school teachers are communicating with students and the parents in terms of needs and structure and, you know, assessing how their day is and what strategies they should be using. Like, I feel like my daughter's 15 and I'm sort of like out of the loop. They communicate, like, it's almost like she's managing it, and I'm not sure if that's good or bad, because I really don't know a whole lot about what's going on, because it's so, teacher-student focused. And I'm like, okay, well, they're the teachers, they're dealing with what happened at school, and I have no idea really what's going on there. And if there's a big problem, I'll probably see it. It will manifest, it will become apparent. But she is 15. And where's the balance? Like, I feel like everything's sort of shifted, and now I'm down
Right.
here and she's up there.
So your question is, hey, your daughter is 15, and right now it seems like the approach is that they're managing a lot of the communication, a lot of the intervention and feedback and all that is happening within the student, the teacher-student relationship, and maybe some of the team members, and you're kind of like not understanding what's happening outside of those not meetings, but like discussions and problem-solving situations. And so you're wondering, well, is it going well? Is it not going well? Like, what are they working through? Is that close?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. So I think your point is well taken. Like, as a parent, we always, it's like I know it's even more so for children with special needs and learning differences. But even with a typical child, like, once you're no longer allowed to go to visit them at lunch and all that, like, you're like removed, like, there's this a gap of information, like this dark, like, what's happening, like, what's going on. And for your daughter, you have very good reasons to want to know. So but I would approach this like this. It's like, okay, there's some good in this. The good is that the teacher and student, your daughter, has apparently positive relationship that's working, supposedly. And so I would start always with that, like, this is amazing. I hope that it continues. I hope that every teacher is able to reach her like you are. Like, this is really, really important. And maybe the add-on to that would be, if I know more of the struggles and how she's resolving them and some of the things that you're suggesting, I would be able to echo that at home. She would hear that from another source. And I think whatever good's happening would be increased even further, because, but here's the catch. The catch is that, and I don't know the situation at all, but the catch is that there's an understanding that whatever is communicated to you, that you would use that as a good thing, but not necessarily like, you want to make sure that your daughter feels like anything that mom knows, I'm not going to get questioned about. Like, what I'm saying? Like, it's like you want to make sure that it's still working for her. So you use it in a positive way. But I'm thinking like some situations where a child is working with a psychologist at the school or counselor. Or even when I work with some clients and they're like, well, I don't know if I want my mom to know this or dad to know this, or whatever. I say, okay, here's the deal. I said, legally, I have to tell them if you are going to hurt yourself or anybody else, okay? But, bottom line though, is if you tell me, hey, I want to keep this between us, I will let you know after you say it whether I can do that or not, based on what you tell me. But if it's something like, my friend is starting to use drugs and I don't know how to handle that. And I'm like, okay, so why might your mom or dad want to know that? And why do you want to keep that from them? Like, I would explore that with them. And I might be getting off topic here a little bit, but there might be something that's said or worked on where someone might feel like, that information, will you use that information in a good way? I guess, I don't know what they might be thinking as to why they're not telling me this. Since I'm just kind of like going out there thinking about this, so I would approach it like, maybe there's a reason why, what is it? Is there a reason? You can ask them that too. Like, I think it'd be fantastic if I know more what's happening so I can echo that at home and help you. But what reasons might there be that you might be hesitant on that? And I try not to use a close-ended question, like, are you hesitant on telling me? And try not to do that. I try to say, what might be causing you maybe to be hesitant? And letting me know. And then there might be something, I don't know, like, she only tells me this and I promise not to tell you. Like, I don't know if that's the truth or not. But I mean, like, there's something there. Or maybe the teacher just like, oh yeah, duh. I don't know if you ever asked before, but like maybe the teacher just didn't occur to her. The day goes by fast and, maybe she does this with a small handful of students and the other parents aren't asking. So she might not think about doing that. But I think for therapeutic and educational reasons, you can take that and double down.
Yeah, and use it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's data, I mean,
Right.
it's not number data, but
Right.
it's like you said, putting it in that calendar
Right.
idea.
Right.
And you also have, it's more information.
Right.
It can be that.
So there's blind copy, so that your son or daughter doesn't know you necessarily want this information to. And that way, at least you're getting copies of the communication, if it's via email, it's not like in person, or in the PPT, like you cannot for the PDF thing from these kind of search part, what they're working on. So that you can work on it.
Or at least have a conversation, because
Right.
15-year-old.
Just so you know what's going on.
You're trying to pull.
Right.
Right.
I think there's definitely information that can be helpful. And I just think as long, you just want to find out there's a reason why you're not being told. And then help them with that if there's a reason at all.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. This is the website. The effective communication is difficult. Right here, that's the link. You can download the PDF, even though you have a hard copy, then all the links work. There's you explore the website, have other resources, social skills stuff. The last thing I should have maybe showed this sooner. If you go to this website, it'll have updates on all kinds of stuff that we're doing. I opened up another office with a fella, and we're going to be, I don't know if you can see that, it's more rec, leisure, fitness, helping kids move and be active, whether it be, dodgeball, basketball, Nerf gunfights, Nerf wars is the word they use, I guess. Like, Todd, Mr. Kellogg, they're darts. I'm like, okay, Nerf darts. But anyways, but the big push is the fitness part. We did a social fitness group that was really a big hit before COVID. And then we had to find our way to another space, and this is the space. And there's the more traditional groups are upstairs. This one image is not downloading, but it kind of shows, oh, there it is. Kind of shows the layout a little bit of where we're at. There's the. So yeah, it's kids are having a lot of fun, and we plan to offer more during the summers and weekends. We're just getting, I think we're in an open house. So if you go to the website, you'll see it. It's gonna be sometime in October. We're gonna hamburgers, hot dogs. You can come by and see what we offer. Work with a bunch of guys who are really great with a lot of the guys. So I think that's my part. PositiveFamilyBehavior.com. But that's on the bottom of your page, PositiveFamilyBehavior.com. It's right there. So most of the demand is middle school and higher. That's most of the demand. Though there's a fair enough, every now and then we get elementary age kids come through. The fitness groups, those who are interested, we actually mixed the ages up and it worked out really well. Because it was still some social skills pushing, but it was a lot of, hey, we're getting stronger, we're getting fitter, we're punching the punching bag, and we're doing this many push-ups, and it didn't really matter with the age at that point. People were able to work together, and so sometimes it works out well. Okay, well, thank you very much. You bet.